Seth, let's start with how you're feeling and how it felt to be finally back in the ring at WrestleMania.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Being in the ring with someone like Gunther is an experience unto itself. First match back after 6 months on the shelf. So the physical side of things was a bit of a trial. I don't recover like I used to. When I was in my 20s, I feel like I could just reset every day. It didn't matter what came before. Now it's just a different animal. And this recovery from this surgery was I think the hardest
Really?
recovery I've had. Even with the full knee that I did in 2015, I was just a young man. Like nothing bothered me. This was hard. This was a very difficult recovery. It was painful. It was slow. I think I'm just getting better every day. I was really happy to get through WrestleMania and not have what I felt was a regression. I was concerned that just the physicality of the match with Gunther would cause some sort of regression or a re-injury. It's so hard because when you go into a match like that, you can't be hyper focused on taking care of yourself. You kind of got to let it all go and just hope that your preparation has got you where you need to be. So I was very happy to come through that physically relatively unscathed. I think the emotional side of me, I think it was bittersweet coming into WrestleMania, not with the World Heavyweight Championship, not in line for a main event. I mean, that's at this stage of my career, those are what I'm chasing. And to know that I had it in the palm of my hand, lost it, and then, had to come back in a different role was tough. But at the same time, like, there's nothing like hearing the crowd sing the song, come back, 50,000 plus, you get to go in there, do the thing that you love to do, and show the world that you can still do that. Anytime you come back off an injury, and I know I've done a bunch of them, anytime you come back off an injury, get a little bit older, there's always that worry that you're not going to be able to measure up to the version of yourself from before. So all things told, I thought it was a really good experience. Obviously didn't get the outcome I wanted, but it was a really incredible feeling to be able to get back out there after 6 months and do the damn thing.
We're going to get into that match in a little bit, but I want to take us back to WrestleMania of last year,
Yeah.
The day after, and the formation of the Vision. Why did Seth Rollins feel he had to form the Vision?
Maybe a little bit of insecurity. I looked at the landscape and I was starting to kind of pile up enemies. CM Punk, Roman Reigns. When you have Roman Reigns, you have the entire bloodline. So there was a lot of people who were sort of eyeballing what I was doing and what I was saying. They didn't like it. And so I felt like at that stage, there were a lot of, pardon the pun, visions for what the future of the company could or would or should look like. And to be honest with you, I just don't trust Roman Reigns. I certainly don't trust CM Punk. I don't trust either of them to be kind of the figureheads and the leaders. And so I felt like I was the best person suited for that job. I felt like I was in a unique position where I had to kind of take care of those guys, but then I needed to insulate myself on the backside of that. And also, I wanted to not just do this thing for me, but to pass it along to the next generation. And for me, Braun Breaker was the perfect fit for that. The Paul Heyman aspect of it is a little bit more interesting.
You made that bed.
Yes, that was a mistake on my behalf. I think Paul's been a thorn in my side for over a decade. When he was the advocate for Brock Lesnar, when he was the wise man for Roman Reigns. This is a guy who has always latched on to people that would give him power. And at some point, it became necessary for me to have him on my side so that I didn't have to deal with him on the other side. It was kind of one of those, keep your friends close, enemies closer situation. And there's always been a mutual respect between myself and Paul, but we've never sort of stood on the same side of the sand, And so to have him on my side, I felt like I could control it a little bit better. I could handle him if I had him on my side, and if our visions were aligned, it would be, I guess, less for me to have to deal with on the back end.
So, with that said,
Yes.
why Breaker? Why did Braun Breaker stick out to you to be a part of this group?
I mentioned it on Raw a couple weeks back. You know, when I won the World Heavyweight Championship, beat AJ Styles, I've got this new title. I want to make this title. I want to defend this title as often as I can. One of the calls I made was to NXT, to Shawn Michaels. I said, I want to go down. I want your best. Who's your best? First words out of Shawn Michaels' mouth, Braun Breaker. And Shawn Michaels is my wrestling idol, and we all know one of the greatest to ever do it. And if Shawn says Braun Breaker is the best, I'll take his word for it. So I got in there with Braun. He was everything that you would expect and more. Took me to my limit. I was able to get a win that night in NXT. But I saw firsthand what he was capable of as far as his preparation, his execution, his intensity. He had all the tools, but he's a young guy. He's still a young guy, a green guy. And I felt like if I could take him for a year or two, I'd be able to give him all of the information that I know, and we could really prepare him to take the next step and be one of the big money draws for the future of this company.
So the Vision, over the better part of 6 months, dominates WWE. And then October rolls around. You have one of the biggest wins of your career,
Yep.
winning the Crown Jewel Championship over Cody Rhodes. And then it all falls apart. Braun Breaker decides it's time to excommunicate Seth Rollins from the Vision. When that happened, what was running through your mind?
Man, that was a whirlwind of a weekend. You know, you mentioned one of the biggest wins of my career, beating Cody Rhodes, kind of finally getting that monkey off my back. And it's the least talked about thing that happened that weekend. Late in the match, I took a big risk, did something I don't normally do, paid for it, hurt my shoulder, got it looked at the following day. MRI results were that there was definitely an injury, but there was some conversation about whether or not I would be able to rehab, still hold on to the title, continue my role on Monday Night Raw, and move forward as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. The following night, that all comes crashing down. The damage done from Breaker and Reed that night is what put me on the shelf, what put me on the operating table, and what made me forfeit the title, forfeit that WrestleMania main event. And so when I was going home on the plane, I was in such a state of disarray. I felt disappointment and sadness and a lot of guilt that I was letting my fans down, that I was letting the company down. But beneath that, I also felt a lot of anger. And it was interesting because I understood it. I understood what Breaker was doing, but it didn't change the fact that he took away something so personal to me, that title and the possibility of main eventing WrestleMania. I couldn't shake that anger. Again, I understand it. I've been in situations where I've made really difficult decisions, you know? People weren't happy with them. Sometimes I regretted them. But even through that understanding of why he did what he did, I couldn't shake that, just that visceral anger from taking away something that, look, I'm turning 40 this month. I don't know how many of these opportunities I'm going to have left. And so he doesn't understand that because of where he's at in his career. I do, and it's so hard for me to just let that go. It felt like I was robbed of something that I had earned, and I can't let that go.
It's funny because about a decade earlier, you were sort of on the same plane as Braun Breaker was
Yep.
when you broke up one of the most successful groups in history, The Shield. So I guess you do understand a bit of what was going through Breaker's mind.
Yeah, I absolutely get it. I get it. You look at something and you see an opportunity to kind of write your own checks. You see an opportunity to take yourself from, you know, what you might see as a middling role and to take yourself to the very top. And that's what this business is built on. And I'm not going to make any apologies. I've said a million times why I broke up the Shield, what I think it did for the trajectory of our industry. And I think over the last decade, time has proven that even though that was a ruthless move, it was calculated. And if you look at where everybody's at now, I think we did all right.
Perhaps a decade later, Braun Breaker may be in the same position. So let's fast
You're right.
forward now
You're
to
right.
WrestleMania from just last month. You and Gunther, in my eyes, and I said it on the air, had a match that probably stole the entire weekend. Incredible match. Physical, technical at times, but it was great. Only to have it interrupted by Breaker.
Yeah.
So once again, he denies you an opportunity to have that show-stealing spotlight at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, that one's straight out of my playbook, He, maybe he did learn something during that 6 months that we were together. I thought I had all my bases covered going into WrestleMania. You looked at the vision as far as Austin Theory, Logan Paul taken care of, Brock Lesnar had to deal with Obafemi. Gunther kind of came out of nowhere, but it was a good challenge for me. I was really excited to go into WrestleMania to test myself against who I consider, if not the best, one of the best of this entire generation, not just right now. I mean, he's an elite level professional wrestler. I was really excited to test myself my first match back against that. And so to get to the point where I felt like I had it in hand, and to have Breaker take that away again, I mean, that's, that one does feel like karma a little bit. I didn't like the outcome, but I understood the approach. I just think the kid doesn't understand what he's getting himself into yet. And I told him again a couple weeks on Raw, like, you have to make these things count. When you make these decisions, you have to make them count. You brought up the Shield earlier. When I turned on the Shield, I made it count. When I cashed in my Money in the Bank contract at WrestleMania later that year, made it count. When I did the Ruse of the Century against CM Punk, I made it count. So he's got to make it count. The thing is, I just don't know that he's ready. When I made the switch, I had incredible minds around me: Randy Orton, Kane, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon. I had a ton of people around me to put me in a position mentally where I could take the next step. He's got Paul Heyman. And the difference between that group that I just mentioned and Paul Heyman is that no matter what Paul sells you, at the end of the day, he's only looking out for himself. And if he thinks that Braun Breaker, in the back of his mind, isn't going to get him where he wants to be, isn't going to be his meal ticket, Paul will cut you loose in a second. And I just think that's a bad spot for the kid to be in when he's not ready to do this on his own.
So at Backlash, he has an opportunity to do it on his own and prove to you and the rest of the world that he's ready. The irony of what you said earlier, the fact that you formed the vision to take care of enemies, because you were developing a lot of them.
Yeah.
What I find ironic about all this is the fact that today, Seth Rollins is alone, doesn't have many friends because of a lot of the bridges that you've burned over the years.
Yep.
And you may find yourself with more enemies now than you've ever had in your career.
You mentioned it earlier. I mean, that's the bet I have to lie in. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't think forgiveness happens overnight, and I don't know that I'm entirely looking for forgiveness. I think there's a redemption story in there somewhere, but it's here. It's something I got to figure out for myself. And so I understand if people don't like me. I understand if people don't want to see me back on top of the mountain. I get that. I have to prove to myself and to them that I can be that version of Seth Rollins. So I get it. I get why people are skeptical or, downright just completely against having me on their side. I mean, I don't have a great track record. It's up to me to prove to them, prove to our audience, prove to myself that I can be something different, that I can be something better.
I want to wrap up with a two-part question.
Yeah.
The first would be, what does a win for Seth Rollins over Breaker at Backlash do for you?
I think a win over Breaker at Backlash gives me the confidence that Breaker took away from me at WrestleMania, that he took away from me after the Crown Jewel match on Raw. I think, again, at this stage in my career, every single time I have a setback and I have to re-climb that mountain, it gets harder and harder physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I think at WrestleMania against Gunther, I felt like I had that moment and he took it away again. Now, Backlash, I have that moment, and if I can beat him, it'll give me that clarity that I need to move forward to try to get back the title that I never lost.
You have felt the spear at least a half a dozen times over the past month and a half. You'd mentioned earlier that you're going to be 40. You don't know how much more time you have left doing this at this elite level.
Yeah.
What does a loss mean to Seth Rollins at Backlash?
You know, I hadn't even thought about it. I hadn't even thought about the loss, I think. I think one thing that I've discovered about myself during this whole process is that when I tried to insulate myself and protect myself and, in a sense, rest on my laurels as far as sitting at the top, that's when I'm the worst version of Seth Rollins. I think when I have something to overcome, when I have my back against the wall, a chip on my shoulder, something to prove, that's when I'm the best version of myself. And so, a loss might be a setback, but it could also be the kick in the ass I need to be the person and to be the performer that I need to be to get back to where I want to